Ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. Pushes into Hubert Davis. 8 seconds. Davis trying to get free. Over to Fox. Fox, baseline. Up for the shot. Good. Off the glass. Oklahoma calls timeout. But the game is over. The game is over. Carolina has upset number 1 Oklahoma.
With 20 seconds left to play. Goes back to Michael Jordan. Jumper from out on the left. Good! 63-62. 13, 12, 11. Georgetown with 1 timeout. Fred Brown looking. Oh, way to Worthy. Worthy 5. The Tar Heels are going to win the national championship.
Rebounded by Weber. Michigan out of timeout. Weber front court. Carolina with foul. He takes the timeout. They're out of timeout. Technical foul. Technical foul. Brown gets it into Williams. Here comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out to head. Long outside shot. Short rebounded. There. It's over. Carolina has won the national championship. How about them Tar Heels? They are the national champions.
That's it! Make room for 2017. The Tar Heels are the national daggum champions.
This is the Roy's Boys podcast with your host, Joshua Marlowe.
Hey everybody, welcome into another edition of the Roy's Boys podcast powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Tonight's show we're going to focus on the Carolina 77-61 win over Gardner-Webb. I'm joined by my gracious co-host Anthony, who I believe is, glad Carolina basketball is back after last week, admitting he enjoyed a week off from watching the team play. And well, buddy, after you watching the game Friday night, could have used another week off because the team was not in rhythm. Kind of went, as we kind of previewed on the podcast, sleepy environment with a 9 o'clock tip in the Smith Center on a Friday night. They battled through the first half, only led 30-27, cleaned it up in the second half a little bit to pull away and get a 77-61 win, but not the prettiest game from Carolina, to say the least.
Well, I want to thank you for throwing me under the bus to begin the episode as well. And you mentioned sleepy environment. It was a sleepy environment on the podcast that night, as well as we were doing that podcast at 2 o'clock in the morning. So when you asked me that question, I just answered yes. Didn't even honestly listen to your question. Gonna be brutally honest with you. Sleepy environment in the Smith Center. Yeah, that was pretty much the way to describe it. It was somewhat expected, as you said, with a 9 o'clock tip against an opponent in Gardner-Webb that, just let's be frank, coming in did not look like a good team on paper. Carolina, we thought they would come out a little bit slow, considering that they were on a week-long break. I think they came out even slower than we actually thought they were going to come out. The only good thing is Gardner-Webb was just as slow, if not slower, than the Tar Heels. So definitely not a game that you're going to want to go back and watch when it comes to this 2019-20 season. But, at the same time, it's like I said in my analysis of the game. Look, it was not pretty, but you got to look at it this way. They are 3-0. So it's a win, but it's very ugly win.
Yeah, Gardner-Webb came in with some confidence, and I figured that would be the case with Evansville going into Kentucky and upsetting them earlier in the week, kind of giving a little guy a fighting chance, as it's a wide-open season in college basketball. And they gave Carolina a good 30-some-odd minutes of a basketball game where the game was not in doubt, or was still in doubt for the Tar Heels. And at the end of the day, Cole Anthony was just too much for this team, as he's been for all three teams Carolina has played this far. 28 points, 7 of 17 from the field, hit 3 of 7 threes. A little more efficient night shooting. What I like the most, 11 of 3 from the foul line, cleaned that area up in his game. He entered the game only shooting 50% from the charity stripe, was a lot more effective in that, and really was Carolina's offense again for most of the night.
Yeah, look, first half was not great for him. 10 points on, let me see. I have the statistic here of what he shot in the 3 of 8 from the field in the first half. So not great. And I still see a lot of people on there criticizing him, especially when trying to compare him to some of the other point guards we had. But look, this guy, look at the points that he's had in the first 3 games of the year. 34 against Notre Dame, 20 against UNC Wilmington, 28 against Gardner-Webb. Look, people are saying, well, he's, maybe he's taking too many shots. Maybe he's holding on to the ball a little bit too much. At this point, I think the question that you've got to ask those people that are saying he's shooting the ball too much or holding on to it too much, who else on this team do you think deserves the ball on the offensive end that much? I mean, if we're being real honest, I mean, that's a legitimate question to you too. Do you think? I mean, who are these people think? Like, I don't think you're one of those people. But, like, is there anybody else that we're actually sitting here saying on the offensive end is in that much of a groove that we're saying you got to get him the basketball?
No, Carolina's best offense is Cole Anthony shooting the ball. This isn't last year where you had Kobe White, Cam Johnson, Luke May, Kenny Williams on a certain night could be on from deep. Carolina doesn't have that right now. They're not going to have that all year long, even when they get healthy, when you bring back Brandon Robinson and you bring back Anthony Harris and Jeremiah Francis. Those guys, right. I mean, B-Rob's the only one that's proven that you could do it, and it was in a small sample size. We're going to ask him to come back and be a guy that's going to give you 15 to 16 points a night. That's not Brandon Robinson.
I don't see that happening.
Carolina is dependent on Cole Anthony right now to score in volume. It's not the way that Roy Williams likes to play, but it's just the way this roster is currently built. Unless they get production from guys inside, and they got that a little bit against Gardner-Webb. Armando Bacot with his first double-double of his career, 12 points on 6 of 9 shooting, brought down 11 rebounds. If Carolina can get that more consistently, it's going to make it a lot easier for Cole Anthony on the perimeter.
Well, I mean, he was one of those guys that definitely looked a little bit better than most of the other guys on the court on Friday night. Had some issues with turnovers that, of course, Roy talked about. But, I mean, look, 12 points, 11 rebounds, 6 and 9 from the field. That's what I liked, was 6 and 9 from the field. I mean, overall, pretty good night. But again, still a young guy. But I mean, you look at it, 2 freshmen combined for 40 of the team's 77 points. So, I mean, that shows you kind of where this team is at, where they're going to have to lean on those the talented young guys, because I mean, the veterans just on the offensive end, the veterans are just not getting it done, because unfortunately, it doesn't look like Justin Pierce and Christian Keeling are going to be these guys that we thought they were on the offensive end. They're not going to be guys that are going to light up the score sheet and average 14, 15 a game. We thought they might be, but they're proving early on that that's probably not going to be the case. And you know what? Carolina's got no choice but to adjust to that. That was the risk you kind of take with going through the transfer portal. And, who knows? Maybe as the season progresses, one of them will step forward and step up. But, yeah, no, I'm kind of with you. I think, this offense runs through Cole Anthony. I think in the post you'll have those nights where Bacot can get going, Brooks can get going. The thing is we want to see it a little more consistently. But, early on in the season, and again, a lot of people are saying, I've seen a lot of fans on social media saying, well, we can't read too much into it. It's still early in the season. Remember how last year went. I'm telling you, I'm not saying that this is the exact team that you're going to see in March, but it's hard to see there being different trends with this team in March. Like, it's hard for me to see somebody else stepping up and, see Cole going from averaging, in the 20s to dropping down and only having to average, 18 to 17 a game. It's hard to see, us all of a sudden getting, Garrison Brooks to become a dominant post scorer. I don't know if that's going to happen. I think it's just that this team will learn to play the way they've played so far this season, learn to cut out the mistakes, and that's what will make them successful later on in the year.
One last thing on Bacot before we move on. Has 12 points and 11 rebounds. He did that in only 23 minutes. So it was a very productive time on the floor. And circling back to what you just said, I don't know if there's going to be a time where this Carolina team evolves into something else. I just think they've got to have the ability to have more balanced scoring. You've got to have more from Leaky Black. He can't go 2 points, 1 of 6 from the field in January and February and March. He's got to be a guy that maybe doesn't give you double figures in scoring, but it's going to give you 7 or 8 and then still do all the stuff that makes him the guy that he is on the defensive end. I really do think at some point you saw Christian Keeling, and I tweeted this during the game, he just needs to have a series of just positive plays. Because right now he doesn't have any confidence in himself because he's just struggled so much the first 2 games, and it's gotten into his head. And he had a string of good plays. He finally hit a 3-pointer. He looked a little bit more confident in his jump shot. He's going to have to give you more than 9 points when the schedule heats up. Yeah. But Carolina's just going to have to find a way to have balanced scoring, but it's going to be balanced scoring literally 1 through 9. It's not going to be 1 through 4 like it normally is. They're going to need every guy that steps on the floor to give them points in some capacity, whether it's you putting the ball in the post to Baycott and Brooks, or you give it to their guys on the wing, or Leaky Black getting in the mid-range game. They're not talented enough to just live off Cole Anthony carrying this team into March. It's not a good recipe. You've seen Duke, Kentucky, whatever team that has tried the one-and-done era, it's not going to work, and that's why you're going to see Roy tinker as much as any time as ever in this non-conference season to find those kind of lineups that when it gets to conference play, he can trust that's going to give you offense.
Yeah, I mean, that's, ultimately that's the biggest thing is, Roy's going to continue to try to find, who is that guy that's going to step up and, like you said, ultimately be that guy that when they step onto the court come March is going to give you the opportunity alongside of Cole Anthony and possibly Armando Baycott to have the most success. It's good to see guys, like Garrison, still playing well defensively. But I mean, look at his statistics from the other night. 6 points, only 1 of 3 from the field, and 4 of 4 at the foul line. Good at the foul line. He needs to be more aggressive on the offensive end. I mean, it's really that simple. We've asked him to be a leader, of this team. I think, he's got the leadership on the defensive end now. Look, he's got to have a little bit of confidence in his offensive game. When Garrison's on, he's not a bad offensive player. And that is one of the guys that has to step up being a veteran. And, I agree with you on Keeling. I think, if he can get his confidence back, it'll be huge. The problem for Keeling and for a lot of these guys is when is there really a stretch of games that you're going to play, up until you get into maybe the early part of conference season against some of the lesser teams in conference play where you're going to have that stretch of 3 or 4 games where you're playing softer opponents where you can kind of get yourself into a rhythm. This is really the only time that you have that type of stretch this year because of how the schedule sets up. So I'm going to be interested to see, how guys adjust. I mean, look, I trust Roy Williams more than anybody. I think that he's going to get these guys to step up and somebody is going to come forward and become that guy. Maybe it's a guy that's not even on the floor right now. Maybe it's Brandon Robinson. I mean, we don't really know. Maybe Anthony Harris is a guy that we're just, we're waiting on as our backup point guard. That could be huge and help this team off the bench. But the other big thing right now for Carolina is when you would have these guys that were struggling, the starters. I mean, you look the other night. I mean, yeah, you had Cole Anthony, Armando Baycott, and Christian Keeling with, Keeling had 9 points. Outside of that, I mean, Leaky Black, 2 points on 1 of 6, as you mentioned. Garrison Brooks, just 6 points. I mean, your starters aren't overly productive. In past years, you had these guys that you could turn to on the bench and say, okay, let's get something going here. This year, I mean, you don't really have that. I mean, you're running literally 7 deep at the max, and that's with Playtech and Pierce out there. I mean, against UNC Wilmington, they were down to 6 with Baycott off the floor. So, I mean, this is it's a very weird year for Carolina. And we thought coming in, okay, on paper we had seen, okay, this team is going to be a little bit different. But we still thought, okay, there's just so much talent here that they're going to find a way to score. Guys will step up. And I think, maybe we overthought it on the offensive end. But at the same time, I mean, look, it's not like I'm giving up on this team. I mean, this is still a very good basketball team with a lot of potential.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the offensive struggles, and one thing I noticed in the game Friday night